Hello, and welcome to Aquarium Online Academy. My name is Morgan. Here in the studio we have Soraya with us. Today we are going to be talking about a very interesting topic. It's called habitats. Maybe you've heard that word before. Maybe this is a new word for you. There it is right there. Habitat. So what is a habitat, you may ask? If you're asking that question, if you have any answers, if you want to make some observations and learn alongside us today, you can go ahead and always text us live questions to 562-286-1838. If you're watching after this live viewing, you can email us at live@lbaop.org. So go ahead and text us. What is a habitat? Can you give any examples of a habitat? Now, habitats. When I think of habitats, sometimes I think of land habitats. So you can think about maybe a rainforest, maybe a desert, maybe the beach. Maybe you're thinking about an icy habitat. Ooh, yes! Just like right here. This is a very cold and icy habitat. This is the Arctic here. We can see we have a mama polar bear with her two little cubs. Very, very cute here. As you can see in this habitat, this looks really different from where we are right now, here in Long Beach at the Aquarium of the Pacific. If you live locally, we have our own habitat, which we're in right now, our own ocean habitat, which is the kelp forest. So the kelp forest is an example of an ocean habitat. Now, what makes a habitat a habitat? Yes, this is a great picture here, video. So a habitat is just simply a place where animals live. But it's more than that. So you can think about all of the living things and the non-living things that make up that habitat. Ooh, look at these sea lions. So if you look at this habitat, the kelp forest, you can notice that everything is sort of a earthy tone. We have kind of a green and a brown color here. We have water that's a little bit murky. Now this water is a little murky because it has a lot of nutrients in it. Look at these sea lions. They're just having lots of fun. Also something that you should know about habitats is that the animals that live in specific habitats have specific adaptations to live in that habitat. So adaptations are characteristics that living things have to survive in their habitat, right? So let's look at some examples of adaptations. We can see here that, look at these fish. So these fish, they're living in the kelp. So you can see that this is kelp right here by some of its features. So kelp, we have some example right here. So kelp is a really interesting seaweed. So they actually have this little tangle here of roots called the holdfast. This is going to hold on to a rock. It's not like roots. It's just going to hold on to a rock. And it's going to support the rest of this algae. You can also see here that there are these blades. So kelp has these long blade structures here. They also have these air bladders or pneumatocysts attached to them. And that helps it float. Put this back here. You can see the actual real thing here. And you can see that sometimes kelp grows really, really tall. And sometimes it extends on the surface. So those air bladders help keep it at the surface because kelp does need sunlight in order to grow. So sunlight, nutrients, cooler waters, these are all things that help kelp grow. So here we are in a coral reef. So these are the two habitats that we are going to be talking about today. We're actually going to be comparing and contrasting these habitats. So here we are in a coral reef. This is one of our exhibits here at the Aquarium of the Pacific. So you can see lots and lots of fish, right? Many different characteristics on these fish. What do you notice? Step off over here. What do you notice about these fish? What do you notice about the coral? So something I noticed is that the corals are all pretty brightly colored. Something I noticed about the fish is that they all look really different, but a lot of them have pretty striking features. For example, some of them are brightly colored. Ooh, this is a great video here. Yeah, these are very vibrantly colored fish here. And now, do you think a fish that would be really brightly colored would do well in a different habitat, maybe the open ocean, for example? I don't think so. I think that it might, well, maybe. I think that a brightly colored fish may be an attraction for predators, right? But living on the reef where the corals are very brightly colored, this actually helps the fish camouflage. So camouflage helps an animal blend in with its surroundings. So here's some more adaptations. Ooh, here is a great example of a wrasse, a Maury wrasse here. Now, this fish is very special. What adaptations can you see when you look at this fish? You can go ahead and text us your observations that you see here. What do you notice? So when I look at this fish, I notice it has really big teeth, right? Those teeth are huge. It also has really big eyes. It also has a really interesting sort of mottled, almost like a netting pattern of bright greens and a blue color. Also has some lines on its eyes. So this fish has a lot of adaptations. Now, where do you think that this fish might live? Based on these adaptations, where do you think this fish might live? So you can kind of see in the picture here that this wrasse would most likely live in a tropical reef. Yeah, in a place like this, right? So those fish, those Maury wrasses, can get really, really big. They can get up to 7 feet long, almost 300 pounds. Yeah, these fish can be ginormous. And another adaptation that they have is they have a bump at the top of their heads, which is a tangled ball of muscles, and that's going to help its jaw become even stronger. So they're going to use their jaw, those really big, strong teeth, to eat things like crustaceans or mollusks. So something that they have to really crunch into and use a lot of jaw strength to break into. So these fish are really well adapted to their specific habitat. Yes, the habitat that is the coral reef. Okay, so today, friends, we are going to be comparing and contrasting these two environments. The kelp forest. Yes, exactly. So this kelp forest right here, we're going to compare and contrast the living things, the non-living things, some of the adaptations that animals have to live in this environment with the coral reef. So they may look really, really different, but they will have some similarities. You will see. So I am going to draw over here on the whiteboard something called a Venn diagram. So this is just a tool to help us compare and contrast. So I'm going to draw 2 circles. So each one of these circles represents a habitat, so I'll label it here. This will be the kelp forest. This will be the coral reef. And then this middle part right here, this is going to be what they both have in common. Okay, so just let me zoom this. So in this part right here, we're going to put characteristics of a coral reef habitat that only the coral reef habitat has. And here, same thing, characteristics that only the kelp forest has. And then in this overlapping part, they're overlapping because both of these habitats share those characteristics. Okay, so we can actually start right now. They're both habitats. Right? They are both habitats. So comparing and contrasting. So this is where we would compare, and then these outer circles are where we would contrast. All right, so let's go back to the kelp forest. Yes, again, so what are some things that you observe about the kelp forest? So to reiterate, right, the water is a little bit murky. So this water, what I mean when I say murky is it's not completely clear. You can't see very far underwater. And that's because it is full of nutrients. This water is also colder than a coral reef. So remember, this kelp forest, this is a habitat that you can find off our coast here in Southern California. So if you were to travel just a few miles offshore, you would be able to see this kelp forest habitat. You can also see it here at the Aquarium of the Pacific. Here is our blue cavern exhibit, and you can see a kind of a cool top-down view of how that kelp actually grows. So now kelp is an algae, and it is a very, very fast-growing algae. It can grow up to 2 feet per day under the best conditions. Now, yes, go ahead, please text us your questions, your observations. What do you notice about the kelp forest here? So I'm going to go back to my Venn diagram, and I'm going to put in some of the observations that I've made about this habitat. All right, so in the kelp forest, I know it has cooler water. It has cool water. It has, I'll say, murky water or cloudy water. So I also know that this habitat is built by the kelp, right? So habitat. And what I mean by that is that the kelp is actually providing the habitat for the animals that live there. Habitat built by kelp. Something else is I've noticed that the colors in the kelp forest tend to be earth tones, right? So kind of greens and browns. Yes, you can see here different shades of green, different shades of blue. So we'll call those earth tones. Earth tone colors. All right, so that's what I noticed about the habitat. But let's take a look at some of the animals that are found in the kelp forest habitat. Yeah, so here's a bunch of sea lions. So these are California sea lions. And what do you notice about these California sea lions? Well, I noticed that they are moving very, very quickly. They are spinning around. What do you think that they might be doing? They seem to be aware that they are being filmed. Do you think that they could be looking for food? What do you think that these California sea lions are doing? Now, you can see very interestingly that they have flippers, right? They have flippers, they have front flippers, and then they have back flippers as well. And those are going to help them swim through the water. And now you can see that the way that they swim is different from a fish, right? So if a fish is going to swim side to side, right? The way that its tail is going to propel the fish through the water is going to be like this, side to side. Yes, great examples of fish, right? So its body moves side to side. But when you look at the sea lions, the way that their body moves is really sort of back to front. So the opposite. Not like this, but like this. Now that's the same with whales and dolphins because they are marine mammals. So you notice they kind of go like this. They have very flexible spines. So these marine mammals are, yes, and they're not the only marine mammals found in the kelp forest. Of course, we have our sea otters as well. So you can see this sea otter was munching on, looks like, I'm not sure exactly what they're eating, but they are getting a meal right here in the kelp forest. So you can see the kelp that's at the surface of the water right there. And these sea otters live right in that kelp. So sometimes they hold on to the kelp as an anchor when they're taking a nice little rest. And something that they do is the sea otters are very, very important for the kelp forest. They maintain a balance. So they help to eat some of the herbivores that would otherwise eat the kelp. Yes, like sea urchins right here. Exactly. So sea urchins are going to munch on the kelp. That is one of their favorite things to eat is the holdfast of the kelp. And so sea otters help keep this in balance because they are going to eat those urchins. And so keep a balance in that habitat. Okay, so what else did we learn here about the kelp forest? So let's go back to our Venn diagram. So we saw sea urchins, right? So some animals that live in the kelp forest, sea urchins. We saw sea otters. We saw sea lions. And yeah. All right, so those are some of the animals that we saw in the kelp forest, and we saw their different adaptations. We saw how they actually live in the kelp forest. We made predictions about what they eat. Now we're going to go ahead and we're going to look a little bit more closely at the coral reef. Ah, yes. So here's our coral reef exhibit here at the Aquarium of the Pacific. So coral. Is it an animal? Is it a plant? What do you think? Go ahead and text us. What do you predict? Is it an animal? Is it a plant? What does it look like? Well, maybe you may be thinking, I don't know. Maybe it looks like an anemone, and maybe I know that an anemone is an animal. If you're thinking that, then you are correct. Coral polyps specifically, they are animals. They are related to anemones. Oh, this is a great picture here. Yeah, so these are coral polyps in here. And each one of those little tiny polyps right here, so they live together. Many polyps together form a coral reef. So the reef is actually made up of many animals. And now these polyps are very special. They have a very special relationship with what's called zooxanthellae. So this is a photosynthetic algae that live within the coral. This special relationship is great. It's mutually beneficial because the algae gets a home and the polyps get food. The corals get some food. So this is a great way that the corals live, and they continue to build their reef habitats. However, unlike a kelp forest, coral reefs do not grow very quickly. Kelp, remember, grows very, very quickly, can grow 2 feet per day. Corals grow rather slowly since they are animals, and you need new animals to continue to grow the coral reef. So the coral reef habitat is made up of animals. The coral reef habitat makes a very special place for other animals to live. As you can see here, all these different species of fish. If you were to relate the coral reef to a habitat on land that humans have, it's almost like a city, like a big, bright, bustling city full of lots of energy, lots of life, lots of things going on. So at any time, there's lots of fish that are stopping by, migratory fish, fish that live there. And you can see here, yeah, we have stingray, we have rays here. There's rays, there's stingrays. There's all sorts of different fish here that live on the coral reef. So what adaptations do you think that some of these animals have? Ooh, we have a sea turtle here. Yes, sea turtles also live on the coral reef. And so sea turtles, they're not fish, they're not marine mammals, they're actually reptiles. So they are very, very special, unique animals. So they breathe air, so they need to go to the surface. They like the warm water. Yes, here we have a sea turtle from the Aquarium in the Pacific. They can travel long, long distances. They lay eggs. So yeah, sea turtles are another species that can be found on the coral reef. So far, in general, what observations have you made about the animals that live in the coral reef? Let's go back to our Venn diagram. What do we know about coral reefs? Okay, so we said that coral reefs have warm water. So warm waters, warm, tropical water. And this water is pretty clear, especially compared with the kelp forest habitat that had a little bit like murkier water. This water is pretty clear. You can see really clearly these fish, the different patterns that they have, the different shapes that they have. You could even see pretty far. So clear water, right? So how is this habitat built? We said that this habitat is built by coral polyps, these animals. So the habitat built by coral polyps, right? And these are animals. So what else? We saw a lot of bright colors, right? So brightly colored corals. And now these brightly colored corals, they actually get their color from that zooxanthellae, that algae that lives within them. So that's why they are different colors. What else did we see here? Brightly colored fish, right? So let's look at, yeah. Now this is an angelfish. Now this is a really cool fish right here. And some of the things that you can observe on this fish are, look at that fish. Look at their fin right here. They have a blue line almost outlining their yellow fin. Then, of course, on the front here, by the fish's mouth, we have all this blue mottling pattern with these orange dots. We have yellow over the fish's eye. And then, of course, on the body, we have almost like this netting pattern here of blue and yellow. and then it fades out to a darker yellow with an outline of blue. We also have something really interesting right here. So does anyone have any predictions about what this could be? What is this adaptation? So this adaptation is called a false eye spot. And so this fish has this false eye spot to deter predators. So if you're a predator and this fish is swimming along and it swims pretty quickly and you catch a glimpse of this eye spot right here, but it's not really its eye. Maybe as a predator, you would go towards that spot hoping that you would be able to catch the fish swimming right into your mouth. However, since this is a false eye spot, it's going to be at the other end of the fish, and so the predator would not really have any luck there. So this angelfish has a really interesting adaptation. Also, lots of different patterns, right? So there's a bunch of different places in the habitat where this fish may be able to camouflage. The bright colors, the different textures, the different patterns. This fish may be able to camouflage with different corals. Ooh, here we have a clownfish with an anemone. So yes, these clownfish are also found on the coral reef habitat. And these clownfish are very special. They also have a special relationship with the anemone because the anemone is part of the cnidarian family. And cnidarians have stinging cells. So in their tentacles, they have stinging cells. That's actually how they will catch their prey. So a clownfish is actually one of the very few fish that can live within the anemone because they are able to become immune to this stinging cell. They have special mucus that protects them from that sting. So they're able to live within the anemone, get that protection, and have this great relationship there. And you can see in their bodies here too. They also are brightly colored. So you notice we have a white stripe here outlined in black. We have this bright orange color, right? They have their fins that also have that black outline. So these fish maybe are also a little scary for predators too. Maybe they think, oh, these fish could be poisonous, or these fish, who knows? Predators will probably beware. All right, so let's return to our Venn diagram over here. So we looked at angelfish. Yes, our angelfish there with the adaptation of that false eye spot. We looked at clownfish. Right, we saw the anemones. We saw, let's put anemones. All right, so these are some of the characteristics that kelp forests and coral reef have that make them different. So this is how we can contrast kelp forests and coral reefs. But what do they have in common? Right? They're both habitats. I would say that they have animals with special adaptations to survive. Right? So these animals, they have specific adaptations that are going to survive in that habitat. Right? They're both found in specific places. Oh, we are running out of room and time, unfortunately. Well, so today we looked at kelp forests, we looked at coral reefs, we learned about habitats, we learned about some of the animals that live in these different habitats. We learned a lot of things. We covered a lot of content here. So if you have any questions any comments, anything you'd like to share, you can text us again at 562-286-1838 or email us your questions at live@lbaop.org. Thank you so much for watching. If you are a teacher and you have a class watching, please go ahead and email us and let us know your class numbers. Thank you for learning with us today, and we'll see you next time. Bye.